afternoon and welcome to Angels Camp City Council special meeting. This is July 12th, 2025. Again, welcome to everyone. Roll call.
Mayor Chimente.
Present.
Vice Mayor Strato.
Present.
Councilmember Moncada.
Present.
Councilmember Brolio.
Present.
Councilmember Behill is not in attendance. Staff is present.
Thank you. Would you please all stand and join me in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of the agenda. And any changes to our agenda?
Staff is moving forward as is.
Okay. So, there are no changes?
Nope.
Any other discussion? Anybody online? Rose?
Dave Richards is online.
Okay. May we ask for a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
There's been a motion
I'll second.
and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Strato.
Aye.
Chimente. Moncada.
Aye.
Brolio.
Aye.
Moving on to item 4, public comment. The public may address the council on any item of public interest not otherwise on the agenda that is within the jurisdiction of the city. No action may be taken. Matters to be addressed may be referred to city staff or placed on a subsequent meeting agenda. Speakers are limited to 5 minutes per person. There's no one present for public comment. Anyone online, Rose, for public comment?
No.
Okay. Hearing no public comment, moving on to item 5, action items. Discussion and direction of the fiscal year 25-26 budget and provide direction regarding any changes to be incorporated before City Council approves the budget on June 17th, 2025. Oh, Michelle.
Thank you.
There you are.
I snuck over here. Thank you, Mayor, council members. So I'm here to present to you today the fiscal year 25-26 budget for the city. And I've asked the department heads to join us, and also we have Dave Richards is Aaron also.
Aaron is just getting on.
Just getting on
Yep.
to talk a little bit if we have any questions about CIP, and I'll talk to you just in general right now about the approach that we took. So in the budget this year, we decided to go in more so with a bare bones budget just due to a lot of the uncertainties of tax revenue, TOT. We've been watching a decline of both of those this fiscal year, and we're not a lot of uncertainties going into the next fiscal year. Uncertainties because they fund a lot of our sales tax, our TOT, and then Measure A is also based off of sales tax revenues. So I took a conservative approach. So the trending I've seen for the past 3 years has decreased 2 to 3%. So I'm estimating a 5% decrease. Now, if things look better.
Say that one more time.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay, 5% decrease. So in the past 3 years, we've seen it go down 2 to 3% in those categories. And sales tax, not so much Measure A because that's new, and TOT. And so I went with a conservative approach and decreased the sales tax TOT estimate of 5%. We expect property tax to increase slightly. That's holding steady. And then, like I said, Measure A, we only had 3 quarters, but I am looking at historical or if we had received all 4 quarters last year for Measure A, and then decreasing that by 5%.
Michelle, is it okay if we ask you questions along the way?
Yeah, definitely, because it's a lot of information.
So I have a question about property taxes. I know there was a lot of talk regarding the unassessed rolls and Prop 8s. Do you know the status of that? I mean, has our new assessor been working?
Yeah, I have not heard from the county, but I did get a projection from the auditor's office. And so it is showing a slight increase there with property tax, but I can follow up to see where we're at in terms of all the catch-ups that they were doing. But I want to say this last year, things looked pretty cleaned up.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
And then on And on the TOT tax, did you go to the website, California website for TOT by county? Is that where you got that we're down?
So I was looking mainly for our city, because we only
Okay.
collect the TOT here, so I looked at the historical revenue we brought in TOT for the city of Angels only.
Okay.
But in listening to some of the presentation from the Board of Supervisors for the county, they're also estimating, a decrease in their sales tax and DOT. So,
Okay.
so it's not far from. I did do some research at the state level, also looking at what the state was projecting with sales tax. They were pretty much keeping things status quo or a slight increase, but they also have a larger margin to play with. So they said it could actually go 8% under budget or above budget, and they would be okay. And we can't take that much. We're not that, we don't have those reserves. So I figured going with a 5% decrease is conservative, and if we can make our budget work and everybody's comfortable, then at mid-year, if we do bring in more and revenues are looking better, then we can put in some more asks and needs into the budget. And all of the department heads were on board with that. They came in with their main focus being with staff, to focus to make sure that we can have, the 3% COLA increase for all of staff members, and carrying forward with the benefits that we're giving an additional cost to the benefits. I think it goes from $30,000 to like $33,000 annually. So that was important to them, is to focus on staff, trainings for staff, and so that's kind of where we put our money. There's a few asks, and as we go through, I'll point those out. We've been, we need to look at our vehicles as a whole, and that's a program we're wanting to put in place as a fleet management program, and looking at leasing versus owning, and regular maintenance, and kind of getting that all cleaned up. Plus, we have vehicles that I know we could probably surplus, and we haven't done that since, I think, 22. So we need to look at starting with vehicles, and then there will be a lot of other things that we could surplus, which would be revenue back into the city in the budget. So a lot of good things planned, and so this is the first step. So there are no vehicle requests in this year. We did increase vehicle maintenance in certain categories, certain budgets, departments, just because we know those costs of vehicle parts may become larger, and also for like construction and that sort of thing. In terms of our capital improvement, and we'll talk more when we get to that section, I just put into the budget the plan, the 5-year water wastewater plan, because as you know, we're changing engineers. And so Aaron is working he has now all of the projects. We've met with both Dave and Aaron of the two firms. And so we've determined what we're gonna have done in this next year. But then also with new focus on roads and road maintenance, Aaron's gonna put together a comprehensive plan for us for that. So that's something that he will be presenting in a few months from now to the council. So that piece is not in here, but there's special revenue funds set aside that we can use to cover those. And so that will be something we'll add later on. Okay. So we talked about.
If I need to get on a specific page, let me know.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I'm just doing a quick little
Okay.
overview, but thank you. So we'll start with, so that was sort of our overview with revenues, reserve balances. So gas tax, we have about a carryover of $185,000. We have about $200,000 in our SB1 RMRA funds, maybe a little bit more, like $250,000. When I'm doing the final numbers, because we did have the crack sealing project that we just finished up on, not crack sealing, and where we put in the speed tables and all of that. We just are paying that bill this week. So once I get all those numbers, I'll have a better idea. But on the agenda for next week, there's also an item, because the council needs to vote on the project for next year, and we need to get that into CalSmart by, I think it's July 1st. So Aaron's been helping me on that. We have about $90,000 in our strike team fund. PD has the SLESF That's very specific, right, Scott, of what you could use it for. There's about 60,000 in there. And then we do have some reserve balances in our TOT from prior years, small, like 20 to 30,000 in each fire, roads, tourism. And then ARPA, preliminary right now, about 249,000 remains of the 900. Yeah, it's about 250. And then, of course, in our water, there's like around 5 million. In our wastewater, there's about 17 million. So there's quite a bit in the wastewater account. So that's going to fund a lot of these projects that we have as a pay-go going forward. Okay, so you can go ahead and we can go into the budget packet.
Oh, let me see, where am I? I can find my mouse. Okay.
You can go ahead and click. And sort of the general, we kind of talked about this. If we could go to the departments budgets. we'll
Just tell me
start with
when.
that. Okay. There we go, one more.
One more?
On
Yeah.
this page, it got cut off, so I don't know what we're missing.
It was a 0.
Okay, great. Just wanna make
It's just
sure.
showing, so this page is just basically demonstrating that we have a zero-based budget
Okay.
for the year. The revenue we're projecting to come in, we're spending it out. Most of that revenue comes in. This is just the general fund here. It doesn't include our enterprise funds. And so it's just showing that the general fund right now, all of the money that comes in is gonna be distributed out and spent. And we won't be overspending, have a deficit spending, so that's good news. But yes, the best part got cut off, and I'll clean a lot of that up. Okay, so with our expenditures, our first one, so we have the finance department for admin and finance, so that's City Hall, with the exception of building and planning. Very straightforward. I talked about the revenues. We do have all of the tax revenue, the sales tax, the portion of the TOT that is part of the general fund dollars. They all come through this budget here. It's where we record them, but they go out to all of the different departments to support operating costs in like fire, PD, public works, building and planning. So that revenue that comes in, it's just the place to record it. The general fund is looked up as a whole and we're all part of that, but when you break it down by department, all the revenue comes into admin pretty much, unless there's a specific source of revenue like Measure A that would come in through fire's budget.
Are you on, on expenditure summary, or did you jump right into one of our departments?
Expenditure summary.
Okay, I had a question on the last item there, the interest earned. So is that just because we are spending down some of our money that's in the bank, so then your interest earned is gonna go down?
Some of that,
Okay.
and then also just uncertainty of revenue we were getting between
Okay, so
4
it's a
and 5%.
Gotcha.
I was able to lock the CD in for, I think it's 4.15 for 6 months through December, but then after that, it's uncertainty. So I don't want to overestimate, and then if we get more interest, it's money we can put in the reserves. So, yes, good question. So you can see the revenues, the different source of revenues compared to each year and the categories that we're estimating to go down slightly. So that's a 5% reduction for sales tax. Also in the Bradley Birds, that's a sales tax. And then also, well, Measure A is on the other side, but then there's that the TOT, the transient and occupancy tax, we're also estimating to go down. That's just the portion that goes into the general fund that supports all programs, all departments. There are other ones that are specific for roads and tourism and public safety. So those are on the individual department budgets.
On the transfer in, can
Yep,
you explain
there you
that? What's going on there?
Oh, okay, so let's see.
Down
Can
one?
we scroll down a little bit? Oh, okay.
The next page, there you go.
Yeah, so on the transfers in, we do have different revenues that come from like special funds that we will transfer in for that. I would have to, I don't think I have the detail on which one that was from. But it is reduced. Some of that could have been, some of the spending, I don't know, I can get back to you. I can look on my computer, but I don't have the breakout. I should have listed what those transfers in, and I can do that for the meeting that's on Tuesday. But typically it comes in from one of our special revenue funds that we have to cover a specific cost that's in the budget. So there must have been something that had ended and I just can't remember.
So that could be
what
like a
that was.
grant or something on the
Could be
transfer
a
in?
grant
Or something.
Yeah,
That could
or
be-
something from reserves or whatnot, so.
So one of the things that the auditor mentioned was the beginning balance. So is there going to be any carryover from last year, or is that carryover only going to be in special programs?
It's typically just in special programs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so nothing from the general fund?
Nothing right now, but we'll see once
Once you start closing the
all
books?
the books, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Do you anticipate with your crystal ball?
I know. Sometimes there's a small
Okay.
amount that, 100,000 or so that will get transferred over.
Okay.
But I know there's not a deficit spending,
Perfect.
definitely.
Perfect.
We won't be pulling from the negative, so,
Perfect.
but we come in pretty close. That's kind of like when we do our mid-year budgets, we're kind of bleeding up, if there's anything, so.
Perfect.
Okay, but our expenditures for admin are basically, there weren't any asks. We did have some reductions. We had a savings in software. We were going through and looking at some smaller software that we no longer use. And so we were able to save about $5,000 to eliminate some of these smaller little software programs and platforms that have been purchased over the last 5 years that, we're just doing an evaluation because we don't use so much. Savings from the admin fund conversion, it gets spread between the admin budget and then also water and wastewater because there's a portion of that. But there's about $15,000 on this budget that will have a savings for the general fund. And then it's about 30 to 35 total that we're saving annually. And that was because we purchased the software and now we only have to pay hosting fees for AccuFund. We don't have to pay like a leasing fee because we didn't own the software prior. We were hosted in the cloud and we paid leasing and it was like 35 to 40,000 a year.
Yeah, there's a savings with
Yeah,
this.
so we have a big savings there, which is nice. We do pay, in that 15,000 that we pay, I think there's like 7,000 that we pay for a company to host it, so we can access it all through a browser page. And then the other is the support that we receive on the software, so. And we're getting down to the wire on that one, but we will be cutting over July 1. We have everything except for payroll and utility billing, and payroll is very close. We were testing today individual paychecks and comparing them, and we're like a few dollars off here and there. So it's good. It's going to be more accurate and give us the wages where we can see that what's calculating based on base wages and whatnot. So it's going to be very easy to clean, easy to audit, and be able to explain to employees exactly how their pay is being calculated, where before it was just kind of went out there and you didn't get that level of detail. So, and the rates on Springbrook, they would be different because Springbrook calculated certain incentives and education pay and stipends and things based on each pay period. And this comes up with a universal rate based on it's subject to. So you're not going to have fluctuations where people's pay, when they have a lot of overtime or whatnot, they might be paid at a different rate each pay period. That's not going to happen. You'll always have the same overtime rate per the MOU. We're going back and testing it. So it's required a lot of extra testing and looking at each item and going back and reading the MOU, but it's been worth it. So. And then the last piece is to finish up utility billing. We will bill this next cycle out of AccuFund, or no, out of Springbrook, and then we'll switch over in July to AccuFund. So that'll be our next major switch over, but it's
And
exciting.
you'll
So
do
you're running
tests
a
with that.
tandem? You're running
This next one will be tandem, and then we'll switch over. Yeah, so.
Okay.
So we're excited about that and the savings and, better reporting, better software,
Yes.
so.
And cut down on staff time.
Yes, yeah, so.
So this is, the next billing cycle, will there be an explanation put in for the water, wastewater? Okay, perfect.
We will,
Thank
yeah,
you.
because we'll start in July switching everybody over. Well, we're gonna send out, well, we already sent out a notice that should go out next week
Okay.
to all residents about the rate increase that we voted on at the last meeting. We're having that go out next week, and then we've been working on the water rates for non-residential customers.
Right.
And then the next piece would be to notify, once we have all the information of where people will go to register their new accounts and talk about how it's gonna switch, what it'll look like
On the payment for
on the payment portal, because
okay.
that other payment portal will shut down,
Okay.
and then they won't be able to access
What month
that.
is that happening?
In July.
Okay. So July you can make it, it's still gonna go through, or July we have to,
Oh, thanks.
July, it will go through on the old system, or July we have to be on the new
You
system?
have to be on the new
Okay.
system. Yeah, so we'll be sending
And for
out.
the people who are on auto pay,
It'll have to be re-registered.
will they get any type of?
Yeah, they're gonna get all
Okay.
notified, yeah.
Because I don't open my bill.
That's kind of.
I just
Yeah.
flag it in the file. I should.
Right.
But for those people like me who aren't gonna see that in the bill, are we sending a postcard or something that looks different?
Yeah,
Or even an
I know, huh?
Or an
Well,
email?
we have email, we've been collecting
Okay.
over the last year, text numbers, emails, we've been updating the system. And so we're gonna use every method of communication to get that out. So definitely email, we'll look at, most likely snail mail will be the try and true way to notify everybody, but that should go out towards the end of this month, so in a few weeks here.
And in a notification of what the rate increase, I apologize,
No,
we're really
no, it's
walking right
okay.
now, but are you also, I liked what Cal Waste did. They showed what your current rates are and what their increase was per month. Can we
We
do
did
something?
that. It's
Perfect.
already going out next week.
Perfect.
So we already
Perfect.
put
You
the
already-
letter, we're using our third-party mailer who mails our bills to
Okay.
send them out to every customer.
So people will get a sense of how much their rates are gonna go up.
Correct.
Perfect.
Yeah. For the standard rates, now we're doing the
Right.
calculation for there's about a little over 200 non-residential customers.
Right.
And we'll be contacting them individually, and they'll have a letter that talks about their sewer rates and how that going to that volumetric is
Okay.
going to change for them. So it'll say, this is what you're currently, this is what it'll go to. And then, of course, the ones that we'll have some that will have a bigger change. We will be reaching out to them by phone and having conversations with them.
And we've kind of cleaned up the stuff that we've talked about in the past with water and sewer rates, with certain
Correct.
businesses. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe Facebook also,
Oh, we can
or
do
social
that,
media.
okay, definitely. And our website and,
So, Michelle, I have a question about expenditures. Are audit, say that 3 times, audit services really $86,000 a year?
they are.
Wow, that's a lot for an audit.
Yeah, there's two parts to it. It's only about 7,000, but we have to have some GASB evaluations done. Those are not from Price Page.
Okay,
Those are from, I'm trying to think of who the third party is, but they will do our, I think it's Foster and Foster, but they do the valuations on all of the OPEB and the pension, and then they give it to our auditors. So that's about 7,000, but the audit is like 72,000. It's expensive. Yeah.
On the health insurance, there's a mighty jump there. We've almost
Yeah.
doubled on that. And can
Yeah.
you explain why that's happened?
Yeah, so in the health insurance, if you remember, this year we had a vacant position for the city administrator all the way through, I think your benefits started in April, May?
May 1st.
Yeah, so we had a savings there, that was part of it, so that's about 30,000 there. And then just the change with the increase for the employees.
On the union negotiations.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then that also, I believe that first jump also that we did was mid-year because the increase in benefits, even though the MOU started July 1, the benefits didn't change until January 1. So now we're recouping a full year. Plus the city administrator, we had an interim.
Okay.
So yeah, I had to look at that too because I'm like, how did it double?
Is that the same with PERS as wise?
PERS would be the same.
Okay.
Correct, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then also just the different levels, because you're gonna pay more for a classic employee versus a Pepra employee. And so that, we also had almost a full year of not having to pay that for the city administrator. So this factors in a full year of the PERS. So yeah, and most of the increases you're gonna see are in the salaries for the city. And then, let's see, I think that's for water and wastewater. So that's for the admin budget. Pretty much those are the key pieces, like I said, where we tried to save money. We did have overall the net effect of savings at the bottom there was not as large as some of those categories were looked, because we had savings, but that was the increase from the prior year to the current year was about 15,000. Yeah.
I have another question about
Yeah.
expenditure, sorry. So under IT services and then under that's Connet, and they're both at 73,000. So,
One is a summary, it doesn't actually get brought into the total.
okay,
Yeah, and I'm gonna probably remove that and just make it one line so it
Okay.
doesn't look like it's duplicated. The audit services did that too.
okay.
Yeah, so we'll correct that. It's just because we add subcategories in the software I use, and when it pulls it over, it should indent those ones to show that they're like a summary up above, but it didn't when I brought it up to it,
Okay.
so.
I have one other weird question.
Yeah.
We're gonna hop off subject. It says current city hall, old city hall, 2,400 last year, 2,472 this coming year. Is that just for PG&E?
Water.
Water, property tax, all that, just general
All
stuff?
of the, yeah, no proper, I don't think we
We
pay
don't pay
property
property.
tax.
Oh, yeah,
on
that's
there.
right, you don't
We have to
know.
pay solid waste fees.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect, thank you.
Yeah. Yep, just the normal, and
Yeah,
it's
just
just a
the normal.
small interest. Yeah, good question. Okay, so we can go on to the next one, which I believe is it council?
Community support?
Oh, okay, we can talk about, that's a small little budget. It's where we budgeted, I put in frog bucks again, using the ARPA money. We would transfer out, which would leave about 200,000 in the ARPA funds. And to fund the frog bucks program, I think there's still like 1,500 left from this last go around.
I haven't done mine yet.
Yeah, and anything that doesn't get bought when we run the campaign next fall,
Mhm.
that'll just roll over as available money. So,
Is that because we're only allowing one that we're seeing a
Yeah,
slower, which is
yeah.
good because then more people are able to.
Yeah.
it benefit from the program, yeah. And Rose was even saying we could do a push on social media, but there's only about 1,500 in there, so.
Yeah.
So I don't want to disappoint people.
Michelle, on the museum, as I remember, the line item in the budget is more than our allocation, yet we're dropping the allocation to the museum this year?
So last year we added a special one-time.
Oh, the $10,000 for the house?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we're probably gonna hear from Martin on this before before Tuesday, because he is gonna be asking for an increase for, we have someone in there that's doing all the cataloging, and to continue that job, it's a big job and it's an important job, and so I told him to reach out to you.
And we can always do a budget adjustment,
Okay,
with
true.
whatever you approve
Yeah.
from, and you know, the TOT funds help support that, so whatever.
Yeah,
we
it's not a
negotiate.
big ask, but it's,
Yeah.
and I thought, well, if we had it now, but you're right, we could do a budget adjustment.
Yeah, so the contract states 50,000 is what we pay them for support. We pay that usually up front in January. The other portion, the 88,000, comes from the TOT that we pass through it goes to the Calaveras visitors, CVB, right?
Okay.
So, that's their portion of the TOT that we also send off to CVB. And then this year we didn't spend it, and I didn't put it in, but that Frog Hop of Fame are the little plaques, and I know we're looking at something else, but each one is about $3,000 to produce. We didn't pay for anything in this current year. I mean, we still have it budgeted.
But we caught up though, right? We got them all, they're all put in,
Are
all,
we still 3
I don't know,
years behind?
Yep, that's Chris, that's not me.
okay. I was looking, I'll hit them up later.
Okay.
That's what I thought, okay. Just making sure, I was 99% sure.
Yeah, because it might be an opportunity to do something down in the park, continue it down there.
Smaller plaques. And
Maybe end up on a wall.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it'd be amazing.
Yeah.
So when we go to decide that, we can always do a budget adjustment for what we want to do for that. But for now, I didn't put anything in the budget for that. Okay, so that's really it. Community support is small. As we move forward, and there might be things that you want to fund partners in the community, or we can do budget adjustments and present it as an item.
Michelle, and I may have missed this, but do we have anything in, there used to be a line item for like appreciation?
Staff appreciation?
Or is
Yes,
that-
it's coming up. It's under
Okay.
account. It's under your budget.
Oh, okay.
You get to pay for it.
We appreciate it.
Uh-huh.
On page 31.
Thanks.
So the smaller ones I kind of grouped together, city council, our legal expenses and engineering. I did a summary on those. They've pretty much stayed the same. One of the asks, we're keeping this is the council budget, so we just have expenses that we show in, and it pulls from that excess money that I say we have in the general fund, and then we end up balancing it to zero. It gets shared between all the departments. And so you just see the stipends,
So
the
how come-
taxes.
So Michelle, how come they went up $900? Is that just a kind of a, for the city council from 18,000 to 18,900?
Oh, you know what? I think I just did a 5% increase because I came across something that had said that they would be, I know we're not increasing them, but I did come across, I forget, I have to go back and look. I can change it back.
I think that's something we vote on
Yeah.
and we didn't.
Right.
Yeah,
But there was
remember-
something that talked about an annual increase.
And it's probably like what you said, just an automatic and it hits everything. So, yeah, we can change it back.
We can change it
Well,
back.
what's the pleasure of the council?
Change it back.
Thank you.
We can
Thank
change
you.
it back, that's easy.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, there, and I can, if you want me to look at, there was something I came across that had talked in one of our policies about a regular, like, annual
You're
increase,
right.
like a COLA.
Yeah.
or
You're right.
something.
No, you're right. There
And
was.
so I
You're right.
kind of just put it in there as a
Oh, it's okay.
placeholder, so it's good.
You
You
just-
want to take
you-
it out?
You just made us look good.
Yep.
Right? You put it in there and said, take it out. So, good job, Michelle.
Yeah.
There you go. And then the computer software, that's the support from Coneth. And we have our videographer, or the IT services, that the computer software is your licensing for your Microsoft email, the Outlook, that whole package. And then small little office supplies. But the employee appreciation, so I kept that the same. We were well within, I think we were actually under our budget by 1,000 this year. But I go ahead and budget the same thing again. One of the things, we've had a lot of good feedback about what we've recently been doing, where we had that barbecue in the back of City Hall, and some of the feedback, so we're thinking about switching some things up with that, is they really want to get together once a month while the weather's still nice and have a barbecue in the back and set up the tables and the tents, and that was the feedback we got from staff. And so we thought that would be fun to do it instead of like doing prizes or gift cards or stuff. Maybe plan while the weather's nice, like 6 months out of the year, to do one of these barbecues. And then just, we could do some sort of like appreciation or recognition, but nothing too much. And then save it for like maybe at the holiday time, we have more of like the raffles or the gift cards or little fun recognitions that way. But it really sounds like people want to invest in having a barbecue. And
Spending
it's
time
good,
together.
it's good
Yeah.
rapport, and everybody really enjoyed the last one we had, so it was a good turnout. So we're listening and we're gonna focus on that, and then we thanked also when the firefighters cooked for us. That was fun. They made us breakfast, and we were able to make a small donation to the association, which helps goes back into our community, so, for cooking for us, so those were good events. Okay, so really not a whole lot of change in that budget. Legal.
So talk about engineering transferring. Is that transferring in from the enterprise fund to
From
offset?
like a special revenue fund to offset some of the costs that we have for
100,000.
general engineering, correct?
For, okay, other than wastewater engineering?
Correct, yeah.
Roads and
Yeah,
that stuff,
yeah.
okay.
And the water wastewater engineering will be, that's set over to the enterprise budget, and we'll have those fees there. And then any specific capital project, it'll be charged to that fund for the capital project.
So Michelle, not that I want to get into the weeds here, but when you have a legal question regarding water, wastewater, is that amount charged to the enterprise fund? Do you kind of keep track of those and separate those out?
Because they break it out on the billing.
Oh, they do,
We have a
okay.
separate page for each department, but we
Okay.
keep we just basically break it between general fund and enterprise.
Okay, so enterprise is carrying their share of
They
whatever the
are.
costs associated. Okay.
Correct, yeah. Any other questions on engineering? And that's just a piece, so you're gonna find engineering is gonna show up in multiple
Right,
places
right.
here, under building and planning. And then also in the special revenue funds, and then in the capital projects in water and wastewater, so. And then building and planning. So I'm gonna also invite Amy to come share anything, but I can start off with what she's like, please. So in building and planning, let me pull this out. Okay, so one of the struggles has been with the revenues in building and planning. We were just talking about this today, because it seems like the last few years, we've always had to, at mid-year, cut down the building permits. We always estimate too high. A lot of that was because Habitat, we kept projecting the last 2 years. They're gonna get started, and we're supposed to get like 5,000 each house that they build into that. So we'd factor that revenue in, and then we'd have to back it out mid-year because it wasn't happening. So we decided this year would be like a third of the homes would be built, and we factored that revenue in. The nice part is you don't have that expense against it because you're not incurring that. So it's really a wash, but that's why you see such a big change a lot of times in the building permits. I went through, I met with Caitlin and Amy on this. I'm gonna go to my notes here. And we kind of went line by line, and we talked about the different revenues, and like I said, Amy can talk a little bit more about if you have questions on those. But we went through and really like deep dived in, like what goes into that account, what are you estimating? And I think there were some carryovers. We were looking at planning fees. We brought that down quite a bit.
Yeah, and folks,
Well, land check fees is really down.
Here.
Oh, wow. Yeah. $80,000.
80 grand.
Yeah.
well, yeah, plan check fees would go down because we're now doing them in-house instead of through CSG.
Oh,
Ah,
For Michael.
yeah, so,
Okay.
yeah, so that's quite a cost savings to have him there. In terms of planning fees, we actually have, it's a little bit deceptive because we haven't shown a carryover that we've had like for Frogent Plaza 2, all those planning fees, as well as for the Fullaway development across the street. We've also had planning fees for those that we need to carry over that hopefully will be getting off the ground towards the end of this year, early next year. So those will hopefully be carrying over.
so typically would it be more like $5,000 then that you've allocated this year and you're just carrying forth that last year we collected?
No,
Okay.
it always depends. If we had a tractor supply, this would be like 20,000.
Okay,
If we had, so whenever we have a big project, you'll see this jump up quite a bit. So it does this kind of thing. It goes up and down and up and down. And it's very much based on the market. If things are really on the upturn. Although oddly, what we do is we almost do opposite the market. As the market is going down, people will sometimes get ready to develop for the market coming
Come
up.
back.
And so sometimes we will get a spike when everything else is actually going down a bit. So you never really know how to predict it. But for this one, I know we have some carryover from 2 large projects. It's probably a tiny bit low on the planning fees, but we know we have 2 big projects that are going to be carried over.
And then Amy, talk about sign permits. Are we anticipating people spending a ton of money, or just because we're having this new ordinance and everybody's going to follow it? I mean, geez Louise, it goes from 5 to 2,000.
That was an actual, that could be slightly up, or through the new ordinance, we could have. Yeah, you never, it is almost impossible to guess at what these are. And I'll be honest with you, the sign permits that say 500 for fiscal year 24-25 is a little deceptive, because before we converted over to fireworks, sometimes sign permits were counted in the building permit fees.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so now we're more accurately
Okay.
keeping track of them. We tend to do a lot of sign permits, and I am sure last year we did more than $500 in sign permits. So yes, I think this year we will do 2,000 at least. The other carryover that's interesting is the transfer in from engineering, which is of course for Foundry Lane.
Right.
We continue to do some work on that, the alignments and that type of thing. And the other one, even though Michelle hadn't even gotten to that yet, was our Parcel Quest Gateway amount. That's going to start paying off for us hopefully in the coming months when we get our online zoning map up. So for the public to be able to actually, what am I zoned? A real basic question to be able to answer that for themselves. So we're looking forward to that too.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Then I can talk a little bit about the building department. So we do have 2 employees, so you'll see the salaries. Michael came on in December, so you go up a little bit, Bruce. Yeah,
Sorry.
that's okay.
Right here?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, Michael came in part of the year. We do have, what was it? We have 2 employees. We have our outside consulting would have gone down, that we basically, like Amy was saying, that's all come in-house. There are some things like for commercial building that we will still need to use CSG for. That's above what Michael can do, but it's very little and it pretty much covers itself. They wanted to focus on some memberships and training for Michael and Caitlin. So we put about 4,500 in for training and about 300 for a membership. And then we needed to add vehicle maintenance, because now Michael has the old fire vehicle, and so he's driving that. And so that's something that we haven't had to budget for in that category. So really, those are the changes to this budget.
And the health insurance and dental again is because we added Michael in?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
New employee. So.
And on the engineering services, from 70 to 120, is that because of habitat?
Yeah, so that 50,000 you had to transfer in went in to cover any additional costs, but that's also a wash. So if we don't do anything for that, then
It doesn't.
doesn't get charged to us. So with engineering, everything we set up as a task order, even the general engineering services that tie back to the budget or the capital improvement project, and so we're able to track their costs and we record it to different funds throughout the system.
And just to clarify, 50 of that again was Foundry, so 120 minus 50. So we usually allocate about 50 to 70 for engineering just for current projects.
And do we anticipate receiving, the code compliance went from 40,000?
Michael's, it's because we're not outsourcing it.
Oh, it's not outsourcing.
Right, we
Got it.
we took it in-house.
Got it,
Brought
thank
it
you.
100%. I don't think Thomas has been there for 4 months or so.
Okay,
So,
that makes sense,
all in
yeah.
house now. Okay, so we can move on. Thank you.
The best is done.
Thank you, Amy. See, guys, it's not gonna be so bad, see?
They're all waiting back
That's a
there,
good
like they're waiting for the dentist.
Yeah, really, that's what they're
Oh, planning.
Okay, so we're gonna talk about the fire department. So with the fire department, and then having the full year of the Measure A funds, one of the pieces that we're looking at, and John, I'm gonna let him come up here in just a minute to speak about it. So we are positioning for the current schedule that we've been running since January when we hired the staff. So we have every shift, there's a captain, an engineer, and a firefighter. One of the challenges he's been facing this year would be to cover for if we were to go out on strike teams, if we're gonna participate in that, because we do bring in revenue, and there was about 100,000 almost left in his reserve account from previous. I think this year there was only like 50,000 that was brought in, but in some years we bring in a few 100,000, so it does cover the cost of those salaries plus some wear and tear on the equipment and allow some money in that fund. So if that's something, one of the pieces we proposed in this budget was to bring in 3 part-time firefighters. They would only be as an on-call basis. We do have a reserve position in the MOU, and they could come in. They can't work more than 960 hours because there's no benefits. We don't want them to trigger PERS, but it would allow us to provide coverages without having to pay excessive overtime to cover if we were to go out on a strike team or whatnot, so that we can have that as an option. So that's something that we budgeted. It's about 45,000 total, it's about 15,000 a reserve, but that's if you use the full 960 hours. So, and then it's pretty much a wash in terms of you bring in. And I didn't factor in that extra revenue that would be coming in from the strike team, because that's unknown right now, but I did put in the cost just to see what we could afford. So that's a potential savings in salaries if we don't utilize them.
But those salaries, those part-timers would be covered by the strike team going
It
out.
would be.
So it would
Yeah, it'd be a wash.
be a wash.
Yeah, but I didn't put it in that because I didn't want to overestimate the strike team. I just want to see what can we afford and present it at that.
And they would only be used if we went out on a strike team, correct?
Yeah, or it could be, and I'll just.
Come take a
So the thought process is on that, it's twofold. There was some increases in our budget that you'll see, salaries went up and health insurance costs went up. So we looked at some places to potentially make some reductions, and so we made about a $20,000 reduction even in overtime. And I see that being a big offset. So because everybody here, if somebody calls in sick, let's say a firefighter calls in sick, that's overtime. Well, you can bring in part-time potentially for that at straight time. So I look at that as potential cost savings. And as far as going out, it's nice to have those 3 people to assist with going out for potentially alternative funding with CAL FIRE. I mean, there has been years, I think Alvin's been around, when we brought in $450,000, $500,000.
Right.
And when we only staffed with 2 over the last few years, it was really hard to get those units out. Now we're catted in to go out today. If a call happened somewhere, we're ready to go. So
And we did make some money on that. I remember had to pay back the salary, and there's also wear and tear on vehicles that gets paid back, and it all kind of files up in there. But there is money that can be had there.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
And we should, we, as you see in our budget, there is a substantial amount of alternative funding, almost 900,000 there, so we don't have to use that from the general fund. If we can increase that, that's good for us if we can do it. Plus, we're providing a better service. And then, if there's something like we have floods or we have a snow day or some big fire happens, we can upstaff on those days, or wind events, PSPs, stuff like that. We could upstaff the engine on those days, being appropriate though. So all I want to say, the budget is there's not a whole lot of things that we've changed from last year. I am asking for those 3 positions. I think it's pretty much should be a wash. And we did decrease already 20,000 in overtime in the budget for that. Our big increase again was salaries, and that's because we're now 3-0 instead of 2. And we've only had those 3-0 people on for about 5 months last year, so now you got a full year of that. We also got salary increases, step raises, COLAs that are in that, and you guys can see our health insurance went up $82,000. But we did try to make some adjustments with that. Michelle and I working together, like the equipment stuff, we brought down 30,000. We brought 27,000 down in capital improvement, and we also brought 20,000 down in overtime. So those are really the key things. I will say that there is a couple big purchases that we'll need to do, but those line items are lower than they were last year. We're gonna have to buy new, and then also in the MOU now, we have to provide the PPE for the firefighters and the uniform allowance and stuff like that, that's in there, so that brings up the cost of uniforms. The PPE, as far as fire turnouts go, are about $3,500 a piece, And all of ours right now are on a 10-year wear out right now, so I have to replace those, so that will be a big one. Another thing that we want to do, we've had calls where we've had vehicles over the side, we've had to do rescues lately, and we didn't really have all the proper equipment, and other agencies came in, didn't have it either. So I anticipate about a $30,000 expense in rescue equipment. Some really neat stuff that I think is going to be great for the amount of staffing that we have to allow us to do some certain things. But I want those guys to be trained. That's why the training budget went up a little bit. We'll have in-house training where a company will come to us or another fire department and teach our guys some of those skills. So if you have any questions about anything in the budget or the narrative, I would be glad to answer it for you guys.
I had a question about the strike team and stuff. So, so generally, I mean, if we send a strike team, it should be a net positive, correct? I mean, I don't want to send people out into some dangerous situation if it's not a net positive.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the average, I hate to use the word profit, but if you send 3 people out on a fire engine every day, there's about $1,000 of net revenue coming in from that call after we've paid the firefighters.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we've had some of those big years when we've had even 2 rigs out, when we used to have multiple part-time people and I could send out people. So yeah, it is. I would never send out a rig if it's going to be a negative effect. There's no reason. It doesn't
make sense.
No, absolutely not.
Especially for a small agency.
And that's how it would sort of happen when we had 2, because what would happen is I'd had to take someone from another shift to make at least 3. We send them out, and then what happens is the other 3 people here are stuck every single day at overtime.
Right.
So the money that we would make in alternative revenue source would be gone. So there was no reason to do that when we had 2 staffing.
So my question then, I guess, is if we bring in, let's say, $200,000, $300,000, $450,000 in strike team revenue, what happens to that revenue?
So first the thing we do is the money comes in, we pay the people out of it, and then the rest goes into the CAL FIRE fund that you guys then would decide what that could be spent for in the future. And it could be something that's rolled over, like she put, I think, $100,000 in this budget because we had
So
some
you
sitting
can,
there.
there's no,
Right.
is there restrictions on how you can spend that funding?
No.
Or holding it, or
There's
however?
not.
Okay.
The expectation is that really what they're doing is that money's for you to do maintenance on your rig.
Right, so that's the only thing that I would foresee.
Sure.
You're beating the heck out of the rig,
Yeah.
and that's something that we really need to get into. We're
Yeah.
trying to do more preventative maintenance. And the next thing I think we need to do, we really need to have apparatus replacement fund. Like every year we're setting aside $50,000 a year at least, because normally the wear out on a fire truck's about 10 years and you should put it in reserve. It'd be nice to have, at the end of 10 years, we got $500,000, $700,000 sitting there. So now we can do replacement, put another rig in reserve. Right now we're looking good on rigs, just to let you know. The ladder truck's well within its limits, and that's basically function as our primary fire engine. Our wildland rig is fine, we're in the timeline there. The rest of the rigs are sort of outdated, except for the new one, the utility. If you guys get a chance, please take a look at it. It's out in the thing, and thank you guys very much for that. It's gonna be an asset to the community.
Thank you.
I got one.
Yeah.
And it's not exactly on this budget thing either. And then I'll kick one to Michelle too. We're gonna step back in time a little bit.
How far?
To do 4 or 5 years, 6 years. There was talk about an ambulance. Yeah, exactly. I'll give you, it took me a second too to kick it all back. There was talk about starting an ambulance program up here that you thought could pay for itself and generate money, because a lot of what we do is medical assistance. Now,
Correct.
I'm not saying we discuss it right now. That's not, but just to throw that dart out there, and let's
I'm all in.
circle back on that one.
You and I, we're gonna have to talk about some of the stuff, and that's some of the things that will definitely come up, because I think that's something to try to move forward on. And just so you know, on that right now, the current provider in the county has some questions if they're gonna continue to provide service.
Right, that's part of it.
We're all sort of waiting to see how that's gonna play out. Right now, it's probably a business decision to do what they're doing, probably something we would do, because they wanna change either the pricing or decrease the penalties that they're getting.
Right.
The problem with that contract, I'll just say, it's real simple. The problem is they require the ambulances to do all the inter-facility transfers. So every time someone's at Mark Twain and they gotta go to San Francisco, Sacramento, Fresno, There's only 3 paramedic units in the service at a time. One of those is gone for hours, so they're continuously running late. Last week, it was unfortunate, but we had responses of 45 to 50 minutes. That was common for about 3 or 4 days.
Wow.
So we did some alternative stuff on that and brought helicopters really right to the scene sometimes, and we just were trucking people over to the helicopter. So I think they're, from their business model, they're trying to make adjustments. See
I
if
heard
we
there
can
was some interesting stuff going on down there.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I'm all in on that. I think there, even if you didn't have an ambulance, and I know we're getting off topic, but just to put it out there, if we had paramedics on the fire truck, which is something we'll be talking about, you can bill, even if you don't transport, about $700 to $800 a call. So that's a I mean, most of our calls are EMS, even though last year on the thing here, we did run a lot of sort of fire stuff, but most of the time you run 70 to 80%. And we can bill, and if we set that up even with the provider, they can put that on their billing sheet. We pay them like $25 a sheet for billing. We get that, they do it all for us, and then it comes back to us. I will say the collection rate's about 30%, just so you know.
Right.
Yeah.
It is about 30%. 33 on a good day. Any other questions? Huh? Mr. Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor,
Good.
Council, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Guys have a good day.
How did you get that truck so fast?
It was there.
They had it.
I only got one more for you.
Chris got his the next
The
day.
major
We got it, hey, we got it one day too, but we took a while before over there.
Right.
They're in stock on that.
Oh, okay, that's right.
We're gonna budget that way every year unless we have something where we need to.
Perfect, I just want to make sure that 10% major
Yeah,
is still.
yeah, it's always good because you never know year to year.
Right.
So.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna go on to, I think, PD. Here we go. Okay. So in our police budget, pretty much revenues are the same. We had some funds like Wings of Freedom, which was a special grant or donation we received. The grant income was for the cameras. Those were one-time deals in the 24-25 budget, so you're not gonna see those coming in. And they were basically, they were a wash. You had an expense that equaled that in there. So you'll see a lot of purchases, capital purchases at the bottom, offset those. And they were one-time purchases. Really, it was fun. We met a lot to discuss how he was gonna staff, because he has 2 new recruits that are in the academy. And so we did budget a full 12 months for them, but they have 2 different salary rates. They have the rate while they're in the academy, and then the rate once they become an officer. We had a retirement of one officer that's gonna be working as the SRO, so I'm gonna let Scott talk a little bit about some of those specifics, but that's just sort of the overview of what we, kind of were the big areas of change for us.
So I'll get into that in just a second, but just informational, I guess, for talk about vehicles and fleet. We haven't purchased a vehicle in I don't think 3 years now. We've been deferring, trying to maintain the vehicles that we have. Currently, because we've had issues recently, we've got 2 Dodge Chargers. One of them is a 2017, one of them is a 2019. Both of them have had engine replacements at 50,000 miles.
Wow.
Both of them has had nothing but problems since we got them back. They're overheating. And it's been, before the Dodge dealership closed in Sonora, they held on to one for probably 6 months before I got it back. And as the summer comes and things heat up outside, those cars just, for whatever reason, run very hot. And that was part of the problem that we were having with them before we had the first engine replacement in 2017. So with that, Sergeant Savage has actually written a grant. We're waiting for the response to see whether we're going to get it. It's it might have been the same cannabis grant, but they were allowing you to put vehicles in there, which would be a DUI car. So it'd be identified as a DUI car, but it could also double as a patrol vehicle. We don't know yet where that's at. We thought we were going to have it by the end of last month, but we haven't received a response yet from CHP, from the state. CHP actually manages that grant. And that's a 2/3 basically dollar amount for that grant, where 2/3 of the vehicle, I guess, would be paid for by the grant, and the city would have to, I was hoping that we would have the answer before budget time so that we could potentially build it into the budget, but we don't have a response yet on whether we're gonna get that. Regardless, I think we can hopefully make it another year if we don't get that vehicle, but I didn't wanna add any more burden onto the budget this year, knowing that some of the tax revenue and things like that were going on, because the going rate now for a new fully fitted police vehicle is about $100,000.
Wow.
Once you buy the vehicles, are about $50,000 to $55,000 for the vehicle. You've got about $30,000 in $30,000 to $35,000 in emergency equipment. Radios are about $10,000, and then you've got your decals and things like that to put on as well. So it's close to $100,000 when you put all the pieces together for a patrol vehicle. So if we get it, I'll be coming back to you to present the acceptance of the grant and then a request to potentially fund the additional cost of the vehicle. But like I said, we don't have a response yet, so we're not sure where that's at.
As long as it's not a Dodge Charger, right?
It will not be I will never buy a Dodge Charger again. They've been a nightmare
Is that
to deal with.
like in other places as well, or is it?
Yeah, it's kind of statewide. CHP had a contract with Dodge as well. They had the Chargers. They've had a lot of the same problems. We send our guys to EVOC training, emergency vehicle operations, and they go down to work with other agencies, and other agencies have had the same response where they've had blown engines and stuff like that. And I do credit it more to, for whatever reason, ours have the 5.7 liter V8, and retro, me, I'm thinking, 5.7 liter, cool, let's get that one. And if I could go back in time, I would have gone with the V6s in those, because I think they have less problems, because it's been nothing but a headache, especially when we're driving back and forth from Sonora. We'd go down there, we'd pick it up, they'd say it's ready, we'd bring it back, and 2 days later it'd be down again, so we'd have to take it back again, and we're doing that, staff is transporting that vehicle back and forth, so it's just been a nightmare. And then the officer that's driving the one vehicle now had to stop, pull over because it was overheating just the other day, so.
It'd be great chasing somebody, never stop.
Yeah.
Well, especially since we're onboarding 2 new people, and you need to have enough vehicles that are running.
Yeah, and we've got the 2 Explorers, which have been good vehicles so far, and Jody's truck has been that truck has been good. That truck's the last vehicle that we bought, and we actually bought that 3 years ago, but it took a year for us to get it fully outfitted and everything, because we couldn't get the equipment and stuff needed for it. So anyways, I just wanted to kind of give you a heads up on what might be coming down the pipeline as far as vehicles are concerned with us. As far as staffing, I just got, so just to go back historically, since last fiscal year, from July through August, we were down a position. We picked up Christina Story as a recruit at that time, so she was in the academy. So we're still, yes, she's on board as a recruit, but we're still down that position. August through December, she's in the academy. December through March, she's in training with a field training officer. So we didn't reap anything, we're down that one position during that whole time. Also going back in December, we lost Joel Burnett. So now we're down basically 2 officers. Since then, that puts us at 4 officers, 2 sergeants and 2 officers to work patrol 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Yesterday or the day before, I finally got the last report on one of the trainee applicants who's currently in the police academy. He's going to be brought on board. I just sent Rose an email today. He's going to be brought on board as a recruit. June 29th is when he'll actually start with us. He doesn't graduate the academy until October 15th. He's in the extended academy, which is a 9-month academy. So that takes a while. We have the second vacancy, which is also the SRO position that we needed to fill. That person that we identified for that slot, I just got approval that he passed his background, but he still has to pass his psych and medical. That academy doesn't even start until August. So it won't be until
It's the same.
January or
School.
February that he graduates the academy, and then 3 months or so while he's in FTO. So I say all that mostly for having an understanding of the impact that has on all the other staff, having to fill the void when there's no staff, to plug the holes or whatever. And hopefully in the next 8 months or so, we'll be, sitting better. We don't, nothing else happens. And then on top of that, we've had an officer out for the last 2 months on a medical and expected to be gone for at least another 6 weeks.
Right.
So we're very short-staffed right now, and office staff also struggles on a daily basis to keep their head above water with just all the new and constant demands of the state, the federal government, the audits that we get done, and then you get an audit, and usually there's things that you have to fix, things that you have to change. Some of that stuff is technology related, and what we're dealing with one right now, we're having to get Conniff on board to work with the county and to get documentation from Conniff to support, cybersecurity threats and stuff like that, and how we're managing all that stuff. So it's all of it's a process and takes time. But that's kind of where we're at as a department. We are, sucking air, keeping our heads above water just barely, but we've got 4 patrol officers right now. That's where we've been for the majority of this year, basically. So just want you guys to recognize the work that these guys are putting in, and they're all hanging in there, and they're all, good morale and that kind of stuff, but it is a struggle. I will say that I have had a few more, which is just nice to see. For collection purposes, I've had a few more applicants apply, although we don't have any, there's no room for them right now. And all of them have been the trainee position, so the people that would have to go into the academy. If this one individual, for some reason, doesn't make it past the psychological or medical portion, at least I have a smaller pool that I don't have to start all over again necessarily, and we can hold another interview and then try to go from there. A lot of this stuff too is based on when the academies are holding their academies. The academy in August, thankfully, I had contacted them back in January or February and said, can you hold me a spot in this academy class? And they've been gracious enough, because I haven't had a name identified for them, that they've held it for us just to get into that class. And it seems like there has been a little bit of a turn in law enforcement with a little more interest than years prior. But it's still, anytime you're hiring law enforcement, it's a process. Just to get somebody on board, it takes 3 to 4 months to get through the hiring process. And then you may start with someone and they don't make it. And I've had that happen several times since we started this as well. So anyways, that's whatever questions you might have.
I do. What a long range for the SRO. I mean, so you're gonna let Scott until he retires, and then.
So the plan is with him, he's retired. So for California Post, I had to do a notice of separation, but then I was able to do a notice of appointment right after that. So he's currently listed as a police reserve level 1 on our post roster. So he is available. He's retired. He doesn't want to come out and work patrol or things like that.
Yeah.
But he doesn't mind helping and sticking on at the school. What'll happen at the school is he'll work probably 3 days a week. And honestly, if we had to keep him all next school year, that is 960 hours, he could fulfill, that if needed, because that 960 would fill that, the necessary hours for him to be at the school. The goal is that once we get, or what will happen, because the school is funds the full-time position, or part of it, is that in October, Andrew Nuss hopefully will graduate from the police academy. In 3 months, he'll get through the field training program. So October, November, December, January. So by February, I'm hoping, if everything goes right, we'll be able to put a full-time SRO back into the school. And then Kirkman will just stay on reserve, and if he's willing to and wants to, and maybe just come out and help for special events and things like that. That's kind of the plan right now, but the way we've all seen and what I've definitely seen over the last 7 years is things get good for a very short period of time. I think in the 7 years I've been here, we've had maybe 6 months that we were actually fully staffed. with working officers and sergeants for all the coverage that we need. So these guys are out there working by themselves, with no cover units for the most part. The nice thing about when Kirkman was here, at least during the school year, was that there was an extra body in town that he would come and help when needed. But now we're solely dependent on the sheriff's office for assistance when those things happen.
So do you feel comfortable, and not that I'm advocating that we don't support the high school, but do you feel comfortable sending one of your officers there full-time, like it has been for the 180 days?
Once we get at least one of the two out of training, I need to have at least one of my sergeants not working patrol and able to cover and work like a 12P to 12A, so there's two guys out there during those hours. I won't sacrifice an officer before then and stay at 4 with no wiggle room unnecessarily. I just don't think that's fair for them, and they're going to get burnt out too with the overtime and stuff like that they have to do. But they've been great for taking care of each other and stepping up. I'm one of the happiest things I've ever seen, because coming from a much larger department, is the mandates. You're coming in and working on your days off. I've never had to mandate anybody. They self-patrol themselves and take care of one another, which is awesome.
So you're okay with, if you get fully staffed, to continue serving Brett Hart?
Yeah, because at full staff, I'm actually +1.
Right.
Okay.
So I'm not taking from, if I'm fully staffed, because once the second officer gets out, I'll have my 2 sergeants, I'll have my 4 patrol officers, and we're good.
Okay.
And then I'll have an SRO, a full-time SRO as well.
Okay.
But I'm happy with at least having one extra to be able to put somebody at the school at that time. And then when my second guy finishes out the academy, then I'll be back up to full staff.
Okay.
That's all I got.
I have some questions for Michelle.
I got a question.
Oh, we have questions for Michelle?
I have a question for Scott too. So, but you're down $388,000 from last year in this budget, and you had overtime and you had some training and different things there. You weren't fully staffed the whole time, and you're still less. So the only question is, and you're bringing on new, hopefully. Did you diminish? I just want to make sure you didn't cut yourself too lean on.
I think some of that was grant money.
It's all those things, a lot of them were.
It is, so it is all these, right? I didn't want to, there's a whole herd of them, and I didn't add them up. So that was me worrying, okay, perfect, that's what I wanted to know.
And there was a couple at mid-year, I got a couple of the one-time expense things that I wanted. So there's no needs or anything. I didn't have any asks, and even the car thing, because I'm hoping that this grant, kind of banking on this grant thing working out for us and being able to go that route and save us some money.
That's fine, I just want to make sure the rims upgrade, the all that stuff, it's not kick. I just want to make sure
Yeah.
it was, okay.
We just have
I'm seeing what I'm seeing.
But maintenance for some of those things, that's all we put in there.
Perfect.
I mean, there was the line item about health insurance is really low. It was
I think-
82,000 and this year it's at 11,000.
Yeah, I think part of that is that at least half of the department does.
Oh, they don't take it.
Yeah, they don't
Yeah,
take
they
it.
don't take it, and also PD didn't vote to go to the.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
I
that's
just
all.
want to make sure that wasn't a typo. 'Cause that's a big difference.
That'll be a whole nother topic of conversation come January, February, is because they're coming back into negotiations. Their
Right.
contract expires at the end of June.
I love
26.
negotiations. It's my
I think they're everybody's favorite.
Not that, I just find the traffic fines and criminal fines, we only collect $150. I mean, tell me about that. What does that mean? It's not traffic tickets, right?
Yes, we don't get much from the state. We get a very small percentage back from the state for when we pull somebody over for speeding or
Really?
anything like that. So I've honestly never even seen a check from the state. So I don't know if it comes to City Hall or.
Yeah, it comes through the county, and then the county
Okay.
pays us.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how that.
But we do get 7,000 for parking enforcement.
Well, and once again, I mean, that's additional burden on the police department, because we do It's Calaveras County Parking
Right.
Enforcement. It's not Angels Camp Police Parking
That's the whole-
Enforcement.
Right.
It's Calaveras County Parking Enforcement. So we do parking enforcement for everybody in the county. And it's burdensome, and there's not a lot of money in it, but there's a lot of work that goes into it on our end.
Yeah, so that
trying
7,000
to-
costs us maybe more and.
In staff time, you know, it easily could. We recently, we were fighting for a long time to finally start going after some people collections wise, and we've gotten some results from that, working with a collections company to get some of those fees paid, which is not a lot, but at least it's something that we wouldn't have received otherwise.
That's a good percent.
And there's no TOT money coming into PD?
I
Not
don't think there ever has
directly,
been.
but it is because you'll see that larger on the admin budget, there's like TOT that comes in and then that comes to offset that cost. Because if you look, the general fund contribution's a little over 2 million to the police department. Some of that's that TOT that comes into the admin budget and then goes out.
But it's
So
not a direct line item.
It's not a direct line item. It
Do they
comes
qualify
through
to
the
be
cover
a line item in TOT?
That would be something we need to look at and look at that original piece that was what went out to the voters.
Okay.
But even if you took that and you split it, you'd still then, the general fund contribution for fire would go up.
Yeah, that'd be the same
It's
contribution.
just moving the dollar around who it comes, because like I said, that main TOT that comes in and the property tax and the sales tax, that all goes to fund a portion of the police department, and they probably have the largest general fund contribution, where I think the next would be the fire department at like 750,000 or something right around there. So theirs is about 2 million.
Yeah.
So they're benefiting from that. Did you want to talk about Randy's position, the increase in hours?
I'm trying to be I was trying to be conservative with this, and I think we were conservative with what we did, but I've got a part-time employee that was initially set for 24 hours a week. There's so much work in that office that we could easily have a full-time person. That's Teresa. I mean, I've got Teresa, and she does all the DOJ stuff. She does all the audits. We also have CCWs. We have parking enforcement. We have all the reporting that we have to do to the state agencies. So there's a lot of work. So what we decided on, unless there's, a way to do it a different way, was to up her from 24 hours to 30 hours a week, which is still not the greatest, but it's a help. We want the help. Ideally, at some point, we would like to see her as I could definitely use a full-time person. The other small piece of that is, at some point, and I think the near future, with the next couple of years, if not sooner, Teresa's going to be potentially, I don't know if you call it retiring or just not having to work anymore for her situation. And it would be really nice to have somebody to be able to step into the role that she has. But with the amount of work that we have right now, Teresa, as it is, spends a day on Fridays up in the property and evidence room, because she also does property and evidence, managing all of that stuff and shipping stuff out to DOJ, receiving stuff, checking it in. And I don't know if you remember, but we took about 6 months ago, we took, I think, 800 pounds of firearms,
Right.
old firearms, to be destroyed. And there's still, there's probably still, I don't want to say how many, but there's still plenty of firearms out there that have to be processed at some point as well. So there's a never-ending, stack of work that needs to be done in that office. Some of it gets done and some of it gets pushed off to the side because we just don't have time to do it. I do have 2 volunteers, which have been great for probably the last, 8 months or so, and that's been a help. Mary Stubbins has been helping with the parking enforcement stuff, which has taken a nice burden off of Randy to have to deal with. But we also, like I said, CCW. And then you got the people that walk into the office and want to copy the report and that kind of stuff. And we probably have 5 to 10 people a day that come in with a need, whatever that may be, on top of just the office stuff that has to get done. So anyway, that's kind of where we're at with office staff.
So when an increase of 30 hours per week, does health benefits kick in and is it percent, or how does?
Does not trigger that, but she's already triggered PERS, so that got triggered this year.
That'll be this next pay period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That position was budgeted this year because Cindy used to be in that. and
Right,
she
right,
was in
Cindy.
She was in PERS.
She was first.
So it was budgeted. She did hit the hours. She went over her 1,000 hours, so.
We looked at, but I don't remember what we looked at the numbers were for full-time,
Yeah, I
if
think.
you remember what if it was a
I don't
full-time
know.
position.
Yeah.
We looked at it, we were just kind of seeing what it was, and yes, I want the position, but at the same time, I'm not trying to burden the city with any more than we have to.
Okay, so that I understand, what your ask is to take her from 24 hours a week to 30 hours a week.
That's what was built in.
6 more hours.
Oh, so it's already in the
6
budget.
more hours.
That's already in the
It's
budget.
not even an ask.
It's not even an ask.
We're
You're just
informing
explaining
you
it.
that we're
Yeah.
gonna increase the
Change.
Let's be
hours.
Father Five sinned. Okay, I got it.
No, that was just me saying the wish would be a full-time position.
I see.
The 30 hours is just bumping it up an additional 6 hours. And I think that's what we've done when Cindy started. She was at like 16 to 20 hours a week, and there's not enough to get in. So we bumped up to 24, and then now we're just trying to get bumped up to 30, and then maybe at some point bumping up to a full-time position if possible.
And we have run the numbers, so.
Yeah, I remember we looked at it. I just couldn't remember what it was.
30,000.
Yeah, I want to say it was like 30,000.
Is that what the prior PT PERS was with Cindy? 42, but then dropped off?
So that, not having a full-time person really impacts your ability to deal with the public walking.
Well,
around
and staying open all the time
And staying open.
too. Office hours. Lately, at least on Fridays, we now have somebody there for part of the day because she works right now. Because we had the budget for this year, I went ahead and let her work, the 30 hours or whatever instead of the 24. And she's there for she's basically there for 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, what she's currently working.
We have like 30 minutes left.
Oh, we do. I'm sorry. Okay.
Okay.
Public
Good thing
Works.
we have Public Works and.
No more questions on PD?
Okay.
You know my number if you need any questions.
Long distance.
Call 911.
That's wild.
Just,
Like in today's day and age.
Right, you, right?
Yeah.
I'll take that. Long distance.
Okay, so Public Works, and then Chris gets to stay up here for the enterprise also. For our Public Works budget, right now we didn't put in any changes in positions. Those remain the same. We are looking at, because our focus is going to be on road maintenance, and that's the piece that Aaron's putting together for our RMRA project, and then also looking at the other funding that comes in, gas tax and TOT for roads. Not a lot of money. We do have, some money in the reserves for the RMRA project, which will give us about $350,000. We bring in just around $100,000 in both RMRA funding and gas tax funding, so it's about $200 in total, plus about $140 in the roads for the TOT. So he's running the numbers, seeing what we can do, looking at that pavement management system. They've got some ideas. And we've had this $100,000 of, it's a Carissa funds that come through COG. They were COVID money. We've always tried to, every year we budget them, put it into like part-time salaries or something. And we're not able to spend it because there's restrictions where you have to increase your FTE count because it relates to increasing work when COVID happened and hiring people. But it's not something that we can sustain going forward, so you'd hire somebody for the $100,000 for the year and lay them off. So he has some ideas about maybe looking at somebody who's retired to come in and help supervise that road work, and we could do one-time funding. So there's a lot of ideas out there. That's just what I wanted to share with you, that we're thinking and working with Aaron, and he's helping us so that hopefully I put it back in the budget for this year. We will be able to spend it, but that cost is just it's just gonna go in and out.
Until we spend it.
Yeah, so
so
but that's what we're hoping.
what's the logic of waiting to fly Dave's position until October?
I've already found it.
What did he say?
He's already flown it, but we're not putting his position in the budget until October because we're expecting that there's gonna be some time until we actually get somebody hired.
Okay,
Correct?
Correct.
okay.
Yeah, so we have a little bit of a salary savings there.
Okay.
And then, but in terms of like, staffing, right now, we haven't increased any of the FTE counts. We are using our allocation because all of their time gets split between, Public Works, water and wastewater, since they do duties, in all three areas. So when you look and you see the salaries, and gosh, that's low, it's only 25% of their salaries is estimated to hit here. And then the other rest, it gets split between water and wastewater. And then the same thing in terms of all their benefits get allocated the same way. And really, I think we put some extra money in for looking at maintenance on vehicles, building costs, vehicle maintenance. And then when we get to the enterprise, we'll talk about some of the asks there. We went ahead and we looked at our iWork, which is their software that they're using. And we determined that all the package that we have for Public Works, it comes as a whole. There was a piece we thought we could take out because we are already getting some of that information through COG, but it's paid for as a whole, so it doesn't, there's no savings there. We still have to pay for the basic package, but we will have a savings when we get to water and wastewater of iWork software that we're not going to be utilizing.
And Chris, do you have in this budget the pre-emergent spray
Yeah, that'll be covered.
in your budget?
Mhm.
Okay. Is it under grounds maintenance
It'll be
or?
underground maintenance, yes.
So you didn't increase that?
I didn't, because we don't typically use,
Okay,
we haven't been
okay.
using all of that.
You're the manager, okay,
Yeah, let me go
Okay.
ahead and Chris.
okay.
So really, I didn't have any asks. I'm gonna keep the budget as is, at least for Public Works. The reality is, we haven't been utilizing all the funds that we put aside, so I didn't see any reason to be increasing anything. If something does go a little bit over, I'll be coming back at mid-year to adjust that. But typically, we've had savings and I've been able to move money around at mid-year and cover everything, so.
So on-call pay, that's down by half. So you feel good about that?
I think it's split now.
It's
split. Oh, I
you
see
gotta
what you did.
remember, it's
Yeah,
Before it
that's
wasn't,
water,
right?
Gotcha.
Right,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
I could be totally wrong, I'm sorry.
No, you're.
I just blurted that
Yeah,
out.
you're right.
Oh, you're right, you got it. So yeah, basically this year, it's mainly training is gonna be the big thing, because most of the staff in that department is green. Dave's retiring. So, yeah, there's gonna be a lot of training, a lot of probably reorganizing and changing some things up. Mainly getting that department more organized and more focused on maintenance and things like that. Any questions?
I had none.
Okay, we'll switch, we'll move on to enterprise. So in our enterprise water and wastewater, I put them there together. So really, some of our maintenance and repair budget, let me go back to the revenues, reflects the 2% for water, the 1% for wastewater increase that we're projecting. So that's already projected in the revenues there. The increase in our CAP program, what we're able to give back as credits to customers, that change is reflected in there. And then in terms of the expense side, we know that we're gonna, in wastewater, have some flow meters that we need to replace. The chemical budget, we're expecting to go up. We're uncertain, but we took a shot at it, and we'll relook at that at mid-year. And then no new vehicles for now. Chris said he wants to wait and see what we put together with the fleet program. And so we're gonna hold off on that and then look at what we need. He was able to replace that one key vehicle in both Public Works and wastewater, which was the truck that carried all their tools that kept breaking down and costing us a lot of money for repairs. We were able to remove the iWork program completely for water and wastewater. It was about $11,000 a year. He said it's not something, he's looked at it, it's not something we're ever gonna use. We already have it covered somewhere else. So that maintenance agreement has already been paid for the year and it ends in November. So we've already contacted them that we won't be renewing that piece of it. And then there's a $15,000 for water turbine meters, is that what?
Turbidity.
Yeah. That we will need to be replacing this year. I'm gonna let Chris go on and finish up some of his.
The thought here is pretty much the same as the other department. It's not taking on a whole bunch, but we do need to take on some deferred maintenance. We have a few of our flow meters that are in spray fields that have gotten flooded and shorted out. They need to be replaced. As for the turbidity meters, that was kind of a shock, a last minute kind of thing that was thrown on us. Hawk, the manufacturer of the turbidity meters that everybody in the state pretty much uses, has decided to discontinue supporting the ones that we have.
Of course they did.
So,
Sounds like everything.
to get parts for them, it's just not gonna happen anymore. And we already have a few at the water plant that are right on the edge.
End of life already.
It's like, we need to replace them. So we're, basically that's the ask, is for the money to bring them up to the newest, latest and greatest model. That's really it. Those are my only asks for this year.
Chris, you're fully staffed now?
I am. Well, on the public works side, yes, I am, but obviously Dave is retiring, so we'll be looking for his replacement. And then on the water and wastewater side, I still have an open position.
You still do?
Yeah, I didn't want to fill it until I got Caleb in the chief plant operator position and trained. Because I didn't want to throw any more mud in that water. I needed to get him trained. Now that he's on board and up to speed, we'll be putting it out after the 1st of July.
And in that position?
That position is budgeted.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I've got one for her. You're up the hot seat. On the Utica, the UWPA contributions at 407.
Correct.
Is that partly because we were going to spend down reserve on that, right? Or did we not?
So the contribution is what we pay to Utica.
Thank
So
you.
that's
Right.
based on their schedule, that 5 year.
Right, that 5-year, which is the right number. I just didn't know if there was whatever
Offsets
percent.
the reserve, it's up in the revenues.
Is it okay?
So
I
if
missed
you
it
look
then.
at the Utica revenue that's coming in, we're spending down some of the reserves there so that, I know it's still kind of a wash, but it's over a 5-year plan, so.
Okay.
Is it
Right,
senior?
that's that.
Yeah.
We're getting down that 250,000 mark
Right,
over
so I
5
think we
years.
only raised it 3%
See,
instead of.
see, but I see 250.
So if you look at it, Utica's increasing our contribution by 10%
Right.
over the next 5 years. We only are gonna increase what we're turning over to the customers 3%.
Right.
So we're using the reserve to cover that difference. We're still a little, like right now where we're at in terms of what we're collecting versus what we're paying out is just this year it hits, it would be a wash if we charged the full.
No, that's fine. Perfect. I was just-
So every year, we're gonna look at it,
Right,
and there
right.
might be some years that we only increase it 1% or
Right, or
whatever.
whatever.
We wanna
Afterwards.
take down that reserve because it's over 500,000,
Right, we need to bring
but
it
we
down.
need to leave something in there.
Right, exactly.
But Alvin, this new rate at 3%, which is less than what was proposed by our consultant, is still not gonna take our reserve to 250. It's gonna be like closer to 350.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and one of the things that you mentioned was you'd be comfortable with bringing it to 250. So, maybe not this year, but next year,
We can look at it again.
we can look at it again
Yeah.
to see if we
There's a
can't
lot of
reduce that.
unknowns.
Sure.
No, I'm fine.
And we don't wanna get in that situation
I like having
that
a
you were in.
piggy
And then we also heard from,
Right.
when we had our public hearing, that people don't wanna see us not increase it and.
Right.
Right.
And then do a big
solid
increase.
waste.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I just-
it was a good conservative.
At 250, I throw my,
Yeah.
yeah, we're good.
Yeah, So.
That's my low number, Mike. All right, keep rolling, sorry.
Playing
No, you're
Indian
good.
poker.
We're gonna go on to the capital improvement projects, and we have yeah, you get to stay, these are all yours. Like I said, we're gonna be bringing something, hopefully in August, back to you as an agenda item where we'll present both sides. Now that Aaron is looking at all of those, we'll present capital improvement for our roads and public works side of things. And then right now, we're still going off of Dave Richards had prepared actually a 10-year CIP, and then we had the meeting with Steve, where he presented for the water rate study, how we could prioritize.
Right.
And so we met with both engineers to kind of look at that transition, and there'll still be things like I explained at the last council meeting that Dave will be continuing on with projects that are in the works, and then we determined, what we could then turn over and have Lumos begin looking at and taking on for the water wastewater projects. So what I included in here was that original 5-year plan. We did accomplish on the water side. We bought half of the meters for the AMR meters. And we purchased the software. And next year, what we're budgeting for would be to purchase the other half of the meters, and then we would need to go out to bid to install them. That's not in the budget right now in terms of, it's in the CIP as a lump sum, but we'll have more specifics, and we'll actually bring that as an item with a budget adjustment with the exact amounts for the capital improvement projects. And then the pressure valves were done this year, so that is completed. And then I believe the Mark Twain Road,
That's beginning right now.
beginning right now for the water projects. So that will be this next year. Everything else on the water projects, we're turning over to Loomis, so that will come in August. We'll be able to present that full plan, but there's nothing new as of right now. And then if we look at the wastewater projects, so we're continuing on with the I&I projects, so with Purdy Road. It'll be split. Dave's gonna finish what he has in progress, and Loomis will take over some of those that have not yet begun. Habitat for Humanity will continue on with Dave and Dewberry. And then we also have the Main Street sewer replacement, right? So the WWCS 3 that will continue on with Dave, correct? And then Loomis is looking at, there's 2 parts to that. I'm looking on, and then of course, we've already done the WWCS 1 and 2, the Booster Way part. We're working on, is it the East Angels now? Vallecito, sorry. I was reading my notes here wrong. Vallecito, Dave has already started on that, so he'll be continuing on. And then we're talking with Aaron about the third part, which is the East Angels. And so, like I said, this is all to come, but I'm presenting the project as a whole that we've already discussed. I don't know, I know Dave and Aaron are online. I don't know if there's any piece or anything they'd like to share.
Gentlemen?
You guys got anything you want to share, Dave or Aaron?
I am online, I am listening in. I think, as we said before, I look forward to putting these priorities together and coming up. I think you said that August was the date to put priority together and come back to the council with those.
Yeah, Aaron, what we talked about last council meeting was, I want to make sure with our capital improvement projects that not only do they move forward, but we have a shovel-ready one to begin as one finishes. So that, we can show the public that the money that we have collected and are collecting, we're using it to move forward with our CIP projects. So I just want to kind of go on record again as saying that. So, and at some point, I'd like us to look at the habitat line that Habitat is being required to put in, and look at how much of that is city responsibility and how much of that could be habitat responsibility? Would it have been a CIP project that we would have done? So it's something just, I don't want an answer right now, but it'd be interesting just to have that discussion at the council level of what the cost of that project is, and should the city be sharing that cost of that project? So,
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
yes,
my boss is calling me.
okay.
Okay, he's looking for a part. Can I go tell him where it's at real quick?
Yes.
Continue on, and I'm just gonna step out the door and make a call.
Mother, may I? Yes, you may. So,
And then in terms of transition, we'll be bringing July 1, the new contract for Lumos. Dave had shared that the Dewberry contract does have an option for an extension up to 2 years. So we'll be utilizing that, and everything that gets issued will be through task orders. And so we won't have to do a new contract, we'll just do an extension of the current one to cover just certain task orders to complete these projects and see through that transition. But the regular ongoing general sewer and water engineering will move over to Lumos.
and Michelle, you anticipate, right now we have, what, roughly, we've allocated about $10 million of CIP projects, and we had about another $10 million set aside. You see that reserve growing even with this modest rate increase, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're putting ahead for those future projects. And you'll see some of these projects, we have the funding source. So some of these we've identified that we are gonna look at either with development or some of the grant revenue. And those were more so the 6 to 10 year projects we were looking at going out and start looking now for some grant revenues, because it could take, when those are ready to go active, to
I want to back up, probably to Public Works. One of the things that you and I talked about after I met with you regarding the budget was setting up a special reserve. I worry a little bit about, we build it and they shall come, but we can't maintain it. So would it be wise for us to set up a special reserve to be able to maintain what we've currently built and what we currently have, or increase, the budget, or you want to speak to that?
And if he doesn't, I would like to.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, I don't have much to say about that. I mean, you're right. We build these things and, can we maintain it? Building things adds more work. We're not taking any away, and we're not adding to our workforce. So, I would say it would be smart to put something aside to either pay for manpower or, maybe hiring out to do maintenance. I don't know how that looks yet, but you're correct. There is an issue with that, and I'm not a money person, so I don't know how that would work and how we.
But as we streamline things, like with the
Yeah,
smart meters,
you
that
would
does
think
help.
that it's going to help.
It should help relieve the stress
Right.
of,
It should.
it should.
Put time back.
Correct.
into
I
other
mean,
projects.
so
I agree.
innovation and technology should help us along the way.
I agree.
But if you think about that, okay, we're taking a few days a month from that crew, but we're adding a few days a month with a new park, walking
Right.
trails. So,
Some of the new road maintenance that
new
we're
road
going to be
maintenance,
focusing on this year.
there's a whole bunch of additional work. You still have the same amount of guys,
Yeah.
same amount of hours in the day. So, any way we can put any money away to maybe hire another person, I'm all for it. So,
Amy,
And I think we should start, and it's a drop in the bucket, but at least including property rental, park shelter rental, any rentals at the park into a set-aside fund to be used specifically for the park.
It's fine.
Yeah, I agree.
yeah, so if we could do that, Michelle, that's a great suggestion.
Yeah.
Thank
we
you,
can-
Amy.
We can do that. And then there's always, I know we're using 50 of the 250,000 of the ARPA funds, but we have that to at least, as we start figuring out and building reserves, and I think it's a good idea to start looking at that now. You do have a little cushion that if you needed to use some of that to provide certain maintenance there, or if you had to contract it out or whatnot, we can, in the temporary, until you decide if, because right now we really, a lot of unknowns with the, how much savings are we going to have from the smart meters? There's gonna be a transition there, but we'll learn this next year where we're gonna have savings and where we're putting them, whether it's into roads or the park, and whether we'll need another person, but that could be something that we could come back and ask in December, or mid-year.
And are we, like if we were to encourage the community club to like do some work down at the park, I mean, are you open to that? Like some of the maintaining of some of the new stuff that's.
I'm absolutely open to that.
Yeah, and also
Yeah,
just, I think
okay,
it's
yeah.
nice to also maybe encourage that community involvement again and get that, I'd love to see that resurrected again.
Yeah, I would love to see I'm just throwing out ACTA because they seem to be the
Yeah.
the
Or the
Christmas
garden
parade,
club.
the garden club, or in tandem, but they are definitely the feel good farmers market, local community.
Yeah.
I would love to see those guys take that over. That's a conversation we've got to have with them.
And it's
And if they can rent it out, then they can rent it out and make money.
Exactly,
And
then they get
and I
those
don't-
funds.
the only thing I don't know how it works is I don't know about the liability insurance. I would
That's
assume
where
that
my question
I would
lies,
ensure
too.
that, but I'm game. I know you don't want one group doing it this month and one group doing
No,
it next month.
definitely.
You want to have somebody that's in at least a year-long, I could say contract for $10
yeah.
or whatever. But
I think if you, I don't know who runs things for Murphy's Park, but
I don't
their
know.
And
community
they have a
club
community club,
runs
and
They
they have a
do.
board, and they are a 501c3, they're like a,
Right.
I think if you could set
actual-
something up.
So maybe, look at that model and see if any, if they're.
I'll talk to Hereford.
If
I think
they're
he's
interested.
part of that.
Mhm.
Right,
I'll talk to Jim.
Yeah, because that's also nice to have a setup down there where people maybe could even have access to pickleball stuff or bocce ball stuff, like they manage all of it, they keep
Like
the
a rec
kitchen
person,
clean, like
yeah.
a rec person,
Like a
like
rec person.
a
That would be
community.
absolutely-
Right, where they can check stuff out.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay.
So something to think about, we do have some reserves that we,
Don't worry.
that we could use in the meantime until we get an idea and figure these things out, so.
Well, and it goes without saying, I appreciate everything that everyone does. You guys have done an excellent job, and what I appreciate the most is the fact that you're mindful of the fact that these aren't just our dollars, they're your dollars, and in order to keep our city vibrant, we have to stay within a budget. So I appreciate all the work on behalf of the council that each of you guys are doing with that. But you talked about innovation, the boom mower, watched you guys, that's gonna save time. So you are moving in a direction that is gonna free up
Yeah,
some
and every
some time.
CIP project frees you up from having to cobble things together sometimes, or calls, constant calls on an area that is degrading and it's terrible and we need to fix it. So hopefully investing in the city will also free up some of that for you.
I'm hoping.
Okay, so I think that's the presentation of the budget. It's not doom and gloom, which is good, status quo, and conservatively, with the revenues, and we're trying to be hopeful that things will pick up and get better.
You've met with Habitat. I'm hoping to meet with Habitat either tomorrow or next week, but is it likely that we will see some build going on
I think
by
it's-
the end of this year?
Yes.
I think it's still
Okay.
fall, right, Amy?
Yes.
They're moving a lot of dirt, getting underground down.
Yeah, I know they're doing the underground. I just don't know, are we gonna see some
We've
actual
already had
building?
pre-approvals of the models
Okay,
and stuff, so.
okay. That's great.
They're actually starting to try to qualify, which is gonna be interesting. And what I suggest that, once Habitat gets their first house, I hope that Morgan does something, because they're gonna be gorgeous. And the income level's like over $80,000 to qualify, so that's, I think we sometimes think of Habitat, anyway, that's a different subject.
So you're going down a rabbit hole,
That's a
but
different subject. But again, I want to thank each of you guys
Yeah, and thank
for being
you,
here.
Michelle.
And Michelle.
This was a beautiful, I love how you,
Yeah.
how you present this information. It's really
I
easy
agree.
to digest.
Great,
Yeah.
that's great. Good news. Well,
And
thanks for the
I
feedback.
appreciate the fact that you look at historical averages when you build a budget,
I do, I go back, yeah.
and you stay conservative. I mean, let's hope that, TOT and sales tax doesn't drop by 5%, but at least it's felt as if it could drop by
Good,
5%.
and you know that everything can be maintained and
Right.
we don't need to.
Yeah, and I guess Wyndham is going through a renovation, so their rooms are offline, a lot of them, so maybe that's why we saw
That
that.
could be why we
Yeah.
have somewhat of a
Yeah.
dip. Yeah, and the exciting thing is I know as we move forward and we're moving forward with Foundry Lane, and I know there's pieces with that might increase, but one of the pieces I learned, I had gone to a CSMFO conference and they were talking about how to increase certain sales tax or different tax revenue, and it was interesting because if we ever were to build, like I know they talked about conference or, like a convention, it's like, you can actually charge TOT on events.
Yes.
So it might be a way to look in the future. So as where we're going, there's a lot of potential, so.
I appreciate it, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other
Michelle.
questions from staff, city council?
I do.
Go ahead.
Real quick, since I've been here, we've been talking about a vehicle replacement or different things, how to fund them. So I don't know what we need to do, but we probably should put that in. Even if it's just 1% or 2% of their total budget or some number, at least to kick in for some little seed money. It may not do the whole thing, but either way, I think we really need to do something about that. And then my last one is, just for informational item, Greenhorn, I don't believe we get the full property tax amount. When that got annexed in, is there something weird? I could be totally off my rocker too. I'm looking back at Amy.
They had a share, I'm sure the county shared.
I think there's a share, there's a something.
There was a tax share agreement when they annexed, I bet you, with the county.
I think,
Yeah, there had.
just for my own curiosity, there's some sort of a tax share. Like we don't get all that. You'd think we'd get a heck of a lot more than we do.
I
Can
bet
you,
you're right.
at some point, in anybody's spare time,
Okay.
kick that an agenda item at some point down just for an informational thing, or even just let us know. It doesn't have to be in. But yeah, just my own
So
stupid
Pam,
curiosity.
you're renegotiating.
Yes. So that's it. If we start looking at annexation and different things, I, as the city, I want the lion's share of that property tax. So that's all I have.
As the county's cutting their budgets, so.
Yes, I know. So I'm just that's all I got. Thanks.
We've started talks with the county administrator about the tax sharing because in anticipation of the fact that we're going to do annexation as soon as Foundry Lane comes into play.
Okay.
So
Perfect.
the talks are beginning already.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Any other comments? Thank you, Dave and Aaron, for being online and being able to answer our questions. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
There's been a motion and
Second.
a roll call. Aye, aye,
Sharada,
aye, aye, aye.
Clemente, Moncada, Rolio. Thanks, Dave. Thanks,
Aye.
Aaron.
Thank you.
Have a good night.